We don't know how many of the school shootings and other mass murders since the advent of Prozac are involved with the psychiatric drugs. There's too much suppression of data. But I do know this, that nearly every single mass murderer has been through the psychiatric system. And we know that most of them were on psychiatric drugs at the time of their shooting spree. We know that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, that Eric was on Luvox. We know that James Holmes, who perpetrated the horrible shootings in the Colorado theater, was already feeling violent but had never committed violence when his psychiatrist put him on Zoloft. And it's during the time he was on the Zoloft for several months that he became increasingly violent. He cold turkey stopped his Zoloft 20 days before the shooting, but by that time he was completely psychotic, and people don't necessarily recover once they're tipped over into psychosis by these drugs. We know that the Navy Yard shooter was put on an antidepressant, not an SSRI, but trazodone, shortly before he committed mass murders in Washington, D.C. We know that the Las Vegas shooter who killed 59 people had Valium in his bloodstream at the time of the shootings. This has not been covered in the major media, but I have actually seen the reports of the coroner's office. And Valium, like all benzodiazepines, disinhibits behavior and has been known for decades to be associated with violence. We know that Adam Lanza, the Sandy Hook shooter who killed 20 6- and 7-year-olds, was on psychiatric drugs, but we don't know which ones. We have on video the Assistant Attorney General of Connecticut saying he couldn't tell people what drugs Adam Lanza was taking because people would stop taking their psychiatric drugs. That's how controlled the information is. We know that the recent Parkland school shooter in Florida was in psychiatric treatment leading up to the shootings. One of the reasons why the Department of Children's Welfare in Florida didn't intervene to do more to stop the Parkland shooter was that they called his psychiatrist, who said everything was okay. He was taking psychiatric drugs. What a dreadful irony. Psychiatric drugs, which commonly cause violence, were used as the reason not to fear him causing violence. Psychiatry doesn't prevent violence. Having more and more psychiatrists involved and more mental health facility involved won't stop violence. In fact, the more psychiatry we have, the more violence we will have.